Sometimes the key to having a good network in your community is getting the incumbents to behave. And Hannah's been a leader at that. Ladies and gentlemen, Hannah Sassaman. Sassaman?
That's great.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you. So I'm Hannah Sassaman, and I am the Policy Director at Media Mobilizing Project, and I'm really, really honored to be here. This is my first Freedom to Connect, and excited to workshop the idea I'm about to present to you, because you guys have such great history and such vision for what we can do in the future. But I'll introduce myself a little more first. So this is me. That's me on top of a water tower in Woodburn, Oregon a few years ago when I was building a radio station with the Piñeros y Campesinos Unidos de Noroeste, the Farm Workers and Tree Planters United of the Northeast or Northwest in Oregon. I spent the first 10 years of my media justice organizing life at Prometheus Radio Project, building low-power FM radio stations around the country and fighting in Congress to pass a bill called the Local Community Radio Act, which expanded community radio stations to a few thousand more communities across the US, including my hometown of Philadelphia. A little bit about me. Happy to talk about soldering with anybody in the room, or FM transmitters, big thing I like. This is my family. That's my little girl, Sarah Bela, my husband, Josh, and Mr. Snowman behind us. And this is the city in which we live. Philadelphia is the poorest big city in the United States. We have 4 out of every 10 children in poverty. We have 400,000 poor people, quite a lot more if you think about this in any humane standard. The federal policy definition of poverty is pretty ironically bad. We cut $400 million from the local Philadelphia school district. We have a budget of that size. We closed 26 of our schools in the last 2 years. Our last governor, Governor Corbett, cut $1 billion from public education. And this is all happening in the town where we have the headquarters from one of the most rich, powerful media companies in the world, Comcast. Comcast made $17.7 billion in revenue the last quarter. $2 billion of that was in profit. 10% of that was a 10% growth in broadband. So they're doing really well. And the cost of a basic triple play in Philadelphia is $80 a month for some people. And I'm going to get these numbers wrong. I think that it's Paris that it's $32 a month. And I think it's Seoul, Korea, where it's $15 a month. I've talked to some families. I met a little girl a few weeks ago. She's 9 years old at a music camp, at a girls' rock workshop where I was presenting on Comcast. And she said that her mother, and they live in North Philadelphia, pays about $300 a month for her Comcast service. They don't have any other choices in her neighborhood, neither do I. Comcast is their only game in town. In Philadelphia, Comcast also fights a lot of the dignity of working people far beyond communications. They fought our bill to expand paid sick days, a paid day off, about 5 paid days off a year, to the 200,000 workers in Philadelphia who don't have it. They spent more lobbying against that bill than any other company in Philadelphia, including the Chamber of Commerce. They pay 3.4% in income tax in a state where 9% or 9.99% is the average. They have a lot of loopholes. They have a lot of their government, a lot of their subsidiaries headquartered in Delaware, which has a big tax loophole. With 10% is the average. They fight teachers and their right to organize. Some of the executives at Comcast raised about $200,000 for the past governor who really gratefully lost. They do handshake deals, trying to break the teachers' union to cancel their contracts. They're involved in a lot of Philadelphia politics. And this kind of behavior is replicated in markets where they exist all over the country. And this is all happening at a time when we have a huge digital divide in Philadelphia. We did a lot of work at my organization on BTOP, the Broadband Technologies Opportunity Program, so we got to study this pretty closely. These numbers are from the Pew Center for Internet Life. So between a quarter to a third of Philadelphians are still offline. About half of seniors, 54% of seniors in Philadelphia, are still offline. And That means that they can't advocate for change. They can't contact City Hall with the same freedom that I have to fight to get their streets plowed, to save their local schools. They can't apply for a job at Walmart, let alone apply for college with the connectivity that they have. But you know, Comcast has an app for that. So when they merged with NBC Universal in 2011, they offered a service that they had been holding in abeyance called Internet Essentials. And Internet Essentials was meant to get about 2 million people online within 3 years. And there's been a number of good filings in the Comcast Time Warner merger that show that they did not do that particularly effectively. So it's $9.95. It's supposed to be $10 a month. You get a $150 a month refurbished computer and free training on how to use it. Maybe it's from Al Roker who gives the training. I don't know. He's right there on the website. And so I just want to talk a little bit about how that service actually works on the ground, how Comcast's solution for the digital divide, which is still an urgent, searing problem in this country, works. So that's my friend Dawn Hawkins and her son Kyrie. Kyrie just graduated from the 8th grade at Strawberry Mansion High School. This is one of the most low-income, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Philadelphia. And they closed his last school under that budget cut. So he then had to walk about 2 miles to his next school. They don't have internet at their house. Kyrie came home one day with a flyer for Internet Essentials saying, "Mom, we can get this service." When Dawn called and tried to sign up, they said, "Well, Ms. Hawkins, you have a $53 old bill from 10 years ago, and you need to pay that off before we can let you get online." And she said, "Can I set up a payment plan? Like what? Excuse me?" Like, and they said no to her. And there's a number, and that restriction has since been removed when stories like Dawn's and others were told in the national press. But the service is only available to families that qualify, their children qualify for free and reduced price lunch. No seniors, no people with disabilities who don't have dependent children, no out-of-work former factory workers or truck drivers, only to families. And when there's another woman that's a board member at MMP, she's a janitor named Audra Trainham. She has a 6-year-old granddaughter that she's raising, huge tweeter, really into getting news online, really into communicating her views. When she called the Internet Essentials folks and said, I'm raising my granddaughter here, we definitely have her on free and reduced price lunch, what can I do? They said she had to turn off her service for 3 months, her internet for 3 months in order to get Internet Essentials. Raise your hand if you would turn off your internet for 3 months in order to get a discount. I thought so. Without a broadband connection, you cannot be a part of a society that truly represents everybody. And we have a plan for how we're going to affect that in Philadelphia. So this is where this might get a little complicated for some of you. So as many of you know, cable is distributed under the Cable Act of 1984 under something called a franchise. And about half the cities and counties in the United States get to negotiate those locally. The other half have had bills passed pushing franchising to the state level. Not in Philadelphia, though. So we are organizing with currently about 5,000 petition signers with groups like the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, low-income organizations like Action United, with the local public access station, PhillyCam, a great organization, to use the franchise renegotiation to win our fair share and true digital inclusion in Philadelphia. Of course, you can usually only negotiate in a franchise for 5% of the revenues on cable, not on broadband. You know, you can get it on cable, the thing that people are cutting, not on what people are buying, which is, you know, internet. You get 5% of the revenues there for the city, for the general fund, as well as public access TV provisions. But I'm an organizer, as are my friends, and this is a negotiation, and we are going to fight for what we truly deserve in our hometown. So we're going to be organizing for demands that reflect our actual human rights when it comes to communications. We're going to be fighting for rates. We're going to be trying to expand programs like Internet Essentials that bring hundreds of thousands more people online, that remove the incredibly disgusting Jim Crow-style provisions that make poor people, primarily folks of color, prove that they're poor in insulting ways in order to get access to the human right to communicate. We're going to demand that Comcast pay its fair share. We cannot make them pay their taxes, I know that, but we can certainly use our organizing power, the power in City Council, the power of public demonstration to require that they pay their fair share to our public schools, which are funded through the property taxes. I forgot to say this. Comcast pays nothing in property taxes on its current headquarters. They received $40 million in subsidies on the new one that they're building out of the gate. That $40 million, $10 million from Philly, $30 million from Harrisburg could have saved 10 schools. We're going to make them pay their fair share. And competition. Because of a law that was passed in 2004 in Pennsylvania, Comcast has to give permission. They have something called right of first refusal over any municipal network that Deb or Chris or other leaders in this room could help our city to build. And we think that they should get out of the way. This gets decided with our tech office, the City Office of Innovation and Technology, but it comes to City Council. And they can pass amendments, they can do side letters, and this will be a vote. It'll probably go through the Public Property Committee. And we have a lot of support from legislators, some counselors in that committee. And this week is probably when this is going to get started. So please follow my Twitter. I will be going crazy in the middle of the night. It will be entertaining for you and potentially for me. They are going to release a needs assessment on what the entire city of Philadelphia thinks of its Comcast service. I think that's an important document. I think that we might use that in the merger. And it's statistically significant, as you see. There'll be public hearings where voices like Dawn's and thousands of others will get to speak about their anger and their hope for change. And this is probably going to be happening in the next few weeks. And this is why we're using the franchise. It's because it's about movement building. We were having a conversation during the break about whether or not net neutrality was a defensive or an offensive win. And I'm very excited for the panel this afternoon to talk about that. In my theory of change, it is absolutely an offensive win because we've woken up millions of people on how they are more powerful than the incumbent telecommunications interests in this country. And this is another place where that can be exerted in the most local, granular way. We're going to have a referendum on Comcast in its hometown and demand the change that we need in cities across the United States. And we're going to inspire local legislators to fight through the hubris of their local telecom incumbent, whether it's AT&T, Time Warner, Comcast, to stand up for their actual constituents. And right now is a good time to do this. They want to look good. They want to look like they're serving people. And the news that's been coming out because of all of our work here is not looking good for them. In Philly, there's the worst hair day I've ever had. I thought I'd point it out to all of you. In Philly, we're getting a huge amount of national press and a huge amount of support from people from many different sides, from technologists, from low-income folks, from legislators. Baltimore, under their mayor, they've officially hired a contractor, and they've gone through a number of CIOs who've been fighting to get out of their local franchise. Their franchise is up next year, and they have an election next year. Seattle, I know a number of you are following how Ed Murray has been pursuing a fiber project there, and there's incredible community organizing there led by Sabrina Roach of Brown Paper Tickets, both for low power FM and for local municipal broadband. This is happening in Albuquerque in 2017, in many cities across the United States. Constituencies and cities and towns nationwide see the right to communicate as a human right, like the right to live without going to jail because you are black or brown, like the right to a dignified life if you're an elder person, the right to home care, like the right to clean water. This is becoming a movement for our human rights. And this is why. That's my daughter again and her best friend Aeneas. And I don't want them to have to compete for a seat in the one good public elementary school that is in the catchment that we live near because Comcast refuses to pay its fair share. I don't want her two dads and to have to fight to afford the internet, to be able to advocate to city council for all of the things we need to live in justice in the poorest big city in the United States, right? So that's what I got. I'm really excited to talk with all of you, really honored to be here, and really inspired by all of your work. Thank you so much.